But Waters finds a hole, one man to beat, he's gone. Ricky Waters makes like Tim Brown on his first punt return. There are no penalty flags.
Hi, this is Lisa Kelly, Notre Dame author and class of 1993, and you are watching the Two Irish Brothers Show. Cheers and go Irish.
How's it going, everyone? I am ND Sean 45.
I'm Irish Benjamin 57.
And together we make up this show known as the Two Irish Brothers. You guys know the drill. Hit that tab in the bottom right-hand corner. Like or dislike the video. Doesn't matter to us. And make sure you guys check out Irv Smith's trip that he's planning for Notre Dame Navy in Ireland this August. Spots are still available. So first things first, Ben, the Battlehawks pull it off again for week 2 here in the XFL.
Yep, the comeback kids.
More like the cardiac kids, as they used to call
depending
them.
on how you want to look at it. Yep, that's very true.
Well, I know the Cleveland Browns back in, I think, the 80s it was, they called them the cardiac kids. And I'm sure there's been other teams since that have kind of drawn the same kind of name. But all I know is I don't care how the Battlehawks get it done, just win at the end of the day.
Yep.
But of course,
I will always take an ugly win over a pretty loss any day of the week. So, yeah, it beats being 1-1 or 0-2 as a couple other XFL teams are. So,
yeah, and that's what it takes at the end of the day. I mean, this is football. You get it done any way that you can. It doesn't have to be pretty. And I've said it many times talking about Notre Dame over the years. Just because you don't win a game by 50 points doesn't mean that you're not a good team.
Right.
So I don't get where people come up with this idea that, because you don't blow a team out of the water, you must suck. You must not be a good team. I hate that mentality.
Yeah. Well, that's more of I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is kind of in the NFL, but it's more in college than it is in the pros, in my opinion, just because you kind of got to have those style points, if you will, to make an impression on the voters. And the good thing with professional ball, one of the big things I like, one of the only things I like over college ball, is it doesn't matter. What matters is winning.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, the win-loss record means a lot more than what your scores show. So.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's talk a little bit about Thursday's game between the Battlehawks and the Sea Dragons. So for the longest time during that game, it was pretty much another defensive struggle. We come into the half, it's 12-8 Seattle, and we're not sure what's going on with this Battlehawk team. I mean, there's been plenty of inconsistencies. Things haven't been totally clicking, but that's to be expected when you've only had 5 or 6 weeks of practice time and you're only 2 games into the season. So it's going to take some time for things to click, and we'll probably be saying that for at least the next 2 weeks after this, because I think 4 weeks is a good enough amount of time for a team to be able to come together and click and get things going on a consistent basis.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and the biggest thing right now with St. Louis in particular is just blocking. I mean, the offensive line just is not giving McCarron time to throw. And when they give him time to throw, he's decent, if not great. So, just the inconsistency play has just been rough. And it's not just the Battlehawks that are feeling it. It's pretty much across the board. I mean, so you look at the leading rusher currently.
I saw it before
the XFL. I mean, the numbers are not the numbers that you would think after 2 weeks.
No, we don't even
think the 300s, maybe just right at 250, and no, it's the hundreds. So
no, I was looking at this before we sat down to do this video, and for the record, everyone, that could change because Houston and the Dallas. See, I still call them the Dallas Renegades. I know they're the Arlington Renegades.
I mean, they're in Dallas.
I'm calling them Dallas. I don't know why they used Arlington, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Depending on what happens between the Renegades and the Roughnecks, we still do not have, through 2 weeks, we do not have one single 100-yard rusher.
Well,
nobody's over 100 yards.
We have one. One.
Who's that?
Kalen Balaj has 107 rushing yards.
Okay, I guess those
And then
stats
right
were not-
behind him is Abram Smith for the Defenders, and Balaj plays for the Brahmas.
Okay, maybe those stats weren't updated yet. But anyway, it's not been good for rushing in the XFL. That's the bottom line.
And if
Now,
it says anything, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 10th best rusher in the XFL currently is AJ McCarron. Just saying. So
yeah. So going back. Yeah, I know it's wow. But going back to the Battlehawks against the Sea Dragons, defense once again was great. I thought the defense played very well. You know, people are like, well, they gave up a bad touchdown. Well, there was a lot of 3-and-outs by the offense. Defenses are going to get tired when that continues to happen.
Yeah.
But overall, that defense has been phenomenal. The running game hasn't been the greatest, but we just discussed that. It's down all across the board, across the whole league. But AJ McCarron, here's his stat line: 22 of 36, 184 yards, 1 touchdown, but no interceptions. That's a positive right there. But he was also the team's leading rusher with 41 yards on 5 carries and 1 touchdown. And even being sacked 3 times, I'd say that's pretty good.
Yeah. Yep. Did have 1 fumble, but that one was kind of, what's the word, out of his control. I mean, when you get blindsided, I mean, it was not like he fumbled in the open field or had the ball pulled out of his hands. He literally got clocked.
Yeah.
So that goes back to O-line play.
Yes. And live game update right now. Houston just knocked the Renegades all the way back to like their own 5-yard line. So 4th and 26 coming up. Houston leads the game 3-0 early in the first quarter. Yeah, I will say this though, despite the lack of rushing, the receiving has been phenomenal. Let's see, where were the receiving stats here? All the way down across the board, pretty decent, I would have to say. You have the leading rusher being Hakeem Butler, 4 catches for 61 yards and 1 touchdown. Austin Prohl continuing to make his presence felt, 37 yards on 4 receptions, no touchdowns, but he did help set us up. And Marcel Atman, who's supposed to be the dominant one in our receiving game, slow night, 23 yards on 3 catches. But it's week 2. We could probably say that the whole video and just call it quits, but it's week 2. Still trying to get your feet wet.
Yep.
But the bottom line is, the Battlehawks are 2-0, and for us, that's all that matters. Definitely one thing that made a difference between in the game against the Sea Dragons was, where was it at? Where was it at? I just had it. Turnovers. That made the biggest difference in that game. Seattle had 3, and turnovers will kill you. This is basic football 101.
Yep.
So
the
Battlehawks are 2-0. Let's talk about the other games in the league. And yes, like we said, Houston and the Renegades are going on right now. So Saturday, we had a very sloppy game between the DC Defenders and the Vegas Vipers, which, of course, as we all know, the Vipers crap standing up, right?
Yep.
Doing the horizontal crapping.
Yeah.
So the Vipers, they had a pretty rough game, but really it was kind of rough for both teams because they were playing in a downpour last night.
Yeah, it was very rainy in Vegas.
So I guess I could bring the stats up for that game real quick. But something else while I'm doing that, Ben, something I wanted to talk about with the Vegas Vipers, and this was a trend that was going on all across the Facebook groups and message boards last night. Is everybody's I shouldn't say complaining, but they're talking about the Vipers and how bad it is that they're playing in Cashman Field in Las Vegas, which is a baseball stadium for one of their minor league teams out there. But what I wanted to point out with that is what other choice did they have? I mean, what's his name? Al Davis's son that owns the Raiders. Is it Mike Davis?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Well, Mike Davis, he's not letting them play in a Allegiant Stadium, so that's out. They can't play now. Myself personally, I thought the University of UNLV and their stadium, Sam Boyd Stadium, would be a good fit for them. But what I didn't realize is, I guess that stadium is quite a wreck. It needs a lot of repairs, and I guess it's gotten as bad as that they wouldn't even pass an inspection.
I had not heard that, but that's interesting.
So based on that, you got to give the Vipers a little bit of a break here. What were their alternatives?
Yeah.
This was all they had.
Yeah. The other thing that people need to realize with the scheduling, which goes into effect with the whole like where they're playing and stuff, is since the XFL was brought in on such short notice. Because I saw this in kind of like the Battlehawks territory, people were complaining about the fact that there's like 4 away games in a row for the Battlehawks. And it's because these stadiums that are being used have already been booked years in advance with other events. So they're not going to break a contract with whoever, Trace Adkins, country singer, or Nicki Minaj, or whoever that has already booked this stadium for a tour or motocross or whatever. They're not going to break that contract, so they're going to have to work around certain things. So there's that with Allegiant Stadium in Vegas. There's that obviously with the Dome in St. Louis. I mean, it's the unfortunate thing, and even with these colleges and stuff, these colleges, they use their stadiums for other stuff too. So, I mean, you're giving them such short notice as someone that kind of works in that realm of having events and putting on events and making sure people are taken care of. The more advance notice you give somebody, the better off you are. So that's part of it. And like with Cashman Field, since it is a professional soccer stadium, the dimensions are off when it comes to football. It's 120 yards by I think 82 yards was what it was. 80 yards, sorry. Which a normal football field is 120 yards by 53 yards. So there's that. I think what didn't help was the rain. I mean, you're playing in the rain, and the rain makes even good teams look sloppy, let alone these teams that have no chemistry. So there's that for Vegas.
Yeah, and then the only other thing that somebody did bring up to me, another alternative, is they could have played at the other baseball park there, which was after what's his name, the movie. What?
I was gonna say Harper, but no.
No, there's a baseball stadium in Vegas that's named after the what was his name that the movie The Aviator was based off of? I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, gosh darn it. You're making me blank on it too.
Humphrey.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll look. Well, that's what we have the Google up for. That's what we got. Yep, that's what we got Google for. It was Howard Hughes.
Oh,
Howard
yes,
Hughes.
The Aviator, Howard Hughes. Yes. Now that you say that,
there's a baseball field in Las Vegas that's named after him. I think it's Aviator Stadium or something like that. But I looked it up, and I think the dimensions are a little better for how the crowd is spread out. It would be an upgrade from Cashman Field, that's for sure. But no, people. I think a lot of XFL fans, they have to show more tolerance here on situations like what the Vipers are going through right now, despite the fact that they are becoming a rival of ours. Yeah. But everybody has to understand that. And they were even complaining about the attendance when the Battlehawks were at Seattle. They were complaining that it's only 10,000 people were there. Well, two things. One, it's a semi-pro league.
Right.
And two, it was like 25 degrees out in Seattle.
Yeah.
So 10,000 people for a semi-pro game and in 28-degree weather, I think is pretty damn good.
Yeah, and I think I'm gonna look it up real quick. I think the Kraken might have been actually playing that night.
Yeah, and you're gonna go with
Well,
that just makes
not
sense.
only are
Who
the Kraken are really good this year. I mean, for year 2 of that franchise going off the beaten path for a second. For year 2 is that franchise, they're actually having a really, really good season out in Seattle. So, I mean, that's exciting, and when you have a league that's an upstart league like the XFL, you're going to run into, okay, you got to make decisions on what you're doing,
Yeah.
So, let me.
I mean, you're going to go with, and I'm sorry, but when it comes to going to a game, you're going to go to a NHL team before you go to a semi-pro football game.
Right. Well, and then
generally speaking,
is, people look at like the Seahawks, for example. Okay, well, the Seahawks like sell that stadium out every week, no matter whether they're really good or really bad or okay. They sell that stadium out, and there's a reason that it's called like the 12th man.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go look at the Sea Dragons, who have the same stadium, and it's like, what's going on here?
Well, the bottom line is I can tell you exactly what's going on here. Most people aren't like the two of us. They're not going to just cheer for a team just because it's in their city. They're not going to put the same kind of devotion. Like with Seattle, all the Seahawk fans aren't going to put the same kind of devotion into the Sea Dragons as they are the Seahawks.
Yeah. And I will say, clarifying, the Kraken were playing that night against one of the other best teams in the league, Boston. So that's a marquee matchup that night.
Yes.
In Seattle.
Yes. So anyway, going back to the Vipers and the Defenders, was not a good night for the Vipers. I'm sorry, I have the Defender stats pulled up.
DC played well. I mean, they played well, and that defense was good. I mean, their defense is solid, and it's going to be, people are going to love it. I think it's going to be another defense slugfest this week between St. Louis and DC. You have a battle of 2 unbeatens, both 2-0. Both, if you will, have gotten extremely lucky at the very end of the game. DC probably shouldn't have won their first game. Maybe shouldn't have won the second game. You don't know. But they're 2-0, just like St. Louis. And that defense of DC is looking really good. And they have a familiar face in Jordan Ta'amu that we all know.
Mm-hmm.
Which I was sad that St. Louis couldn't get him. But he came into the league late and wasn't even in the draft. So
yeah,
there is that.
Well, and I'll tell you one thing. Looking down the board here at the Vipers numbers, nobody really stands out. Luis Perez, he was 1 of 5. I think maybe he got hurt. I think he might have got
5.
Hurt.
You have to.
Yeah, because you're not going to just take him out after the performance that he had last week. But I'm looking down the stat sheet here. The only performance that comes great here for the Vipers is Max Roberts on the defense, who had 2 sacks and 3 tackles.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, I read that wrong. He had 2 sacks, 1 solo tackle, and the 3 here was the yards for loss. So I messed that up. But yeah, the Defenders, the one spot that really stands out to me is Abram Smith, running back, 11 carries for 71 yards and 1 touchdown. That's a phenomenal day on the ground. And other than that, everywhere else, nothing really special. I don't mean that in the way that it sounds, but you're right. It was definitely a defensive slugfest. And let's move on to the game that we saw this afternoon between the Guardians and the Brahmas. Now, the Brahmas, what more can you say? They dominated this game from start to finish.
Yep.
And the Guardians, they have a lot of problems right now.
Yeah. Yep. I said it before we were filming. The Guardians are picking up where they left off, kind of like how Houston picked up where they left off in a good way. The Guardians were very much struggling when they were in New York to get anything going on the football field, and it's just picked up right where they left off in Orlando. So, yep, it's rough. I think the Brahmas had a little bit of a chip on their shoulder after what happened last week against St. Louis. So I think they kind of came out pretty angry, and they got a big name coach in Hines Ward who's been through everything with football wise.
Yeah.
So I think he had them very well prepared, and they did. They looked really good today. They looked really, really good today. Jack Cohn looked good today too.
Yes, I have his numbers up here: 16 to 24, 165 yards, 3 touchdowns. He actually leads the league in touchdown passes right now.
Yeah.
And if it says anything, he also led the team in rushing today as well.
Yeah, that's just
It's
crazy.
again,
we have a couple non-dual threat quarterbacks that are in like the top 10 for rushing. That's just like
it just goes back to show how every team is struggling with the run game right now.
Yeah.
And of course, I gotta give a special shout out to the leading receiver for the Brahmas, our guy Alize Mack from Notre Dame, 48 yards on 4 catches and one.
We got a little bit of it. There's a Notre Dame connection on the Brahmas. Cone Mack, although they didn't play with each other,
they're still brothers.
Still Notre Dame guys. So yeah, no, that was.
Absolutely.
I remember watching that last week. I was like, man, this is kind of hard to watch. Like,
yeah, a little bit.
Rooting against these guys.
So with that said, as we all know, the Renegades and the Roughnecks are going on right now. It's an 11-0 Roughnecks lead. And just to give some brief stats here, Drew Plitt, the quarterback for the Renegades, 3 of 6, 26 yards. At this point in time, obviously it'll be different when this video is over. And for the Roughnecks, Brandon Silvers, 2 of 6, 21 yards, 1 touchdown. So you can't really go off of too much right now. But that's right now, that is week 2 of the XFL. And we'll just have to see how the rest of this game turns out before we can really get get anything definitive of how the week turns out. But all I know is the Battlehawks are 2-0. If we can just get that offensive line going, we're going to be a dangerous team.
Yep. The defense is there for sure. So
absolutely. That's the only thing we're missing is consistency on the offensive line. Once that gets going, we're going to be great. We're going to see some awesome things. So, Ben, with that said, I think this is a good point to wrap up the video. Any notes that you'd like to make for anything coming up, or anything you'd like to see, whatever?
Be one heck of a battle next week, man, between DC and St. Louis, man. I can't wait.
What I can't wait for is when the Battlehawks finally have their first home game, because they're opening up the 3rd level.
Yep, they sold out the 3rd level. Yep, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Attendance is going to skyrocket now that St. Louis has got themselves a team. So
yes,
it's going to be fun.
The season's been fun so far, and I think it's only going to get better. So on that note, everyone, I am ND Sean 45.
I'm Irish Benjamin 57.
And as we always say, good night, God bless, go Irish, and go Battlehawks.
Go Irish, go Battlehawks. Beat the Defenders.